Hello, Slashies, and welcome to Slashed, a horror podcast where we talk about the scares, the screams, and the spooky stuff. I'm Grace.
And my name is Wouter, and today is a very special episode because we've actually got a guest host on. Would you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Hello, my name is Joey, and thank you for having me today.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for being here. It's so cool to have a guest host. And the reason why we invited Joey is, well, because he's a dear friend of ours, but also because we actually, the three of us and a couple of other friends, saw the Lighthouse for the first time in February in Ireland, just slightly before the world shut down. And back then we all loved the film and had lots of things to say about it, so it only felt appropriate that we invite Joey over to experience this with us again. So without further ado, before we dive into it, we'll once again have Grace grace us with one of her synopses. Take it away, Grace.
Thank you. The Lighthouse is a 2019 psychological thriller directed and co-written by Robert Eggers and produced by A24. The film stars Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, referred to primarily as Winslow and Wake, as two lighthouse keepers stationed together on a remote island. Winslow and Wake are immediately at odds with each other. Wake gets to visit the enigmatic lantern at night, while Winslow is stuck doing the hard work and dirty chores during the day. Winslow becomes obsessed with accessing the lantern. He's also experiencing visions of an attractive mermaid who tries to seduce him and subsequently drown him. The mermaid vaguely resembles a small figurine that he found buried in his mattress. Wake wants Winslow to stay away from the lantern itself. He reveals that Wake's predecessor convinced himself that there are sirens on the island and that the light of the lantern would bring him salvation. This only fans Winslow's growing obsession with the mermaid figure he found in his bed and the light's attraction. The already uncomfortable and hostile relationship between Winslow and Wake intensifies when Winslow, against Wake's warning, brutally kills one of the seagulls that plague the island. The wind changes and a heavy storm clouds the island for the rest of the film, trapping Winslow and Wake. Winslow becomes increasingly unhinged and it's no longer clear what is really happening, when it is happening, and to whom. After a night of heavy drinking, Winslow reveals that his real name is Thomas Howard, and he is responsible for the real Winsors Death. Not long after this, Winslow tries to escape the island, but Wake seemingly destroys his lifeboat before he can get away. Winslow attacks Wake, inducing a fever scene in which Wake, the mermaid, and Poseidon all blend together. Winslow forces Wake to get in a shallow grave and attempts to bury him alive. Winslow finally gets the key to the lighthouse and he makes his way up the stairs to see the light. The final scenes show how the light overpowers Winslow and his Promethean end.
Sounds a lot less damning when you say it like that.
Yeah, I did not want to put it in there. He gets eaten and shit on by birds.
No, I mean just the whole thing, you know. I really thought it would be easier the second time around. I really thought, we've seen it once, we know what to expect, and still didn't know what to expect.
And how wrong we were.
Yeah. Because I went into this film the second time. The first time I knew this was going to be awesome. The first time I saw the trailer, I just knew this was a film I was going to love, and I did. The second time I watched this is you think you know everything that's going to happen because you've seen the whole thing and you can sort of remember and piece together all the scenes that you've seen before, but still the film finds a way to blindside you at every turn. There's just nothing I thought second viewing, I get to look for all the cool little details that the director has hidden from us. Nope. It's just another huge double mess of two men just going at it for 1.5 hours straight, and it's so. It actually gave me a headache. Just trying to look for something to grip onto.
And I think it's because the first time when I watched it, you kind of assume that everything you see is actually happening and happening in the right order, and then near the end of the film you realize maybe that's not the case. But the second time round I was kind of tuned into that, so I thought, I'm sure I'll understand the film much better now. And in fact, it just showed me how early on it actually becomes this mess, and that's awesome. I understand less of the film than I did after the first viewing. Thank you.
Yeah, and it also had this really weird thing where I misremembered what is supposed to happen with the bird stuff. It was so early in the film. And I remember it as being something that's near the end, or not the end, but more like after the middle, right? More like after the middle part, and was really early. So that really threw me off.
Because it feels like that's the point where everything escalates, but that's maybe the end of Act 1, I'd say, because then the wind changes. So that's so strange because it's such a heavy scene to watch.
Yeah, because it literally just beats you over the head with it.
Yeah.
You know, it just sort of drums it into your skull, and it really makes it this sort of, you know, this sort of voodoo ritual almost, where it's just him beating the witch drum, and every time he beats it, it sort of heralds his own doom.
Yeah.
But things like, what you said, Joey, like, when are things supposed to happen in the film? Because we don't even hear their names until, like, I want to say 45 minutes in.
Yeah.
Like, there's 2 characters in the film, and we don't even hear Wake's name until, like, an hour in. And it's so weird. Like, and we accept that. Why?
In the script, they were actually referred to as old and young. And I think that almost, it suits them better because apart from them both being called Thomas, the names are almost, it doesn't really matter because they're more symbols than characters anyway, I'd say.
Yeah. And even the name Wake is like, it's almost like a homophone for wiki. Like he's sort of almost become eponymous with the job he's doing. It just that's what he's just reduced to. He is just a wiki.
Well, he's a liar as well, so maybe he chose that name because it would fit this job better.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah, that's a good take. Yeah, and also like I don't know how biblical you want to get with this, but then like Thomas the unbeliever, is that what it's called in English? Like the one who didn't believe that Jesus had risen again. Like there's, if you want to go that way, there's definitely some plot significance in there. Like, with like sort of signifying like doubt and mistrust. Like what is real? What do I believe?
And I think the names are actually a reference to the story that it is based on, or at least the true story that it's based on, because it references loads of work. But it's I'm gonna say somewhere in England, which is way too vague, but something like this happened where 2 wikis got stuck on an island together and they ended up killing each other, and they were both called Thomas. And that's about all I know about the story, but that was a huge inspiration for this.
That's insane. How do you end up killing one another? Oh yeah, well, okay, I guess so, like in the film.
Yeah.
But I guess then one of them ended up sort of killing himself.
Yeah.
Well, no, let's backpedal to that actually. Let's get back to that when we get to the ending, because we actually had some discussion about that before we went into it. I can see some gears grinding, Joe. What are you thinking?
Yeah, but it can be that one killed the other, right? And the other just simply died at some point, right?
Yeah,
because
if you're stuck there.
Yeah, you're stuck there for super long, so you might just die from some kind of food trouble, illness, whatever. Like, many possibilities are going on there. Birds.
Yeah. Drinking, lamp oil.
Sirens.
Sirens.
Yeah. Stairs.
Stairs. Yeah.
Axes.
Yeah.
Scurvy.
Yeah. No, oranges there.
Oranges.
Just lobster.
Yeah, let's talk about the food. Let's talk about the damn food. Yeah. Because, okay, this is a thing that I've noticed looking at horror films, and I'll briefly touch upon that. It's not really the point I want to make, but just the food looks disgusting. Like, and I don't think it would have looked better or worse if it had not been in black and white. The food looks disgusting. I think that is a thing that any ambitious horror film should do, is make the food look like crap, because you can see it in Midsommar, you can see it in, I'm thinking of anything, you can see it in here. Just food needs to look gross. That's just, let's park that somewhere and not think about it anymore. No, I want to know how much food they actually had, and because I feel like they had food for like a week and then they just started drinking.
You don't know. I mean, they were going to be there for 4 weeks. They say that at the beginning, to 4 weeks. And then everything kind of goes semi-smoothly until he's supposed to be picked up.
Yeah.
And then they're not. And then you skip a few days, right? Because he's like, oh, maybe they'll come tomorrow. And then Wake's like, what are you talking about? You've been saying that for 2 weeks. So that means they're already there for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And you don't know if that's true. If that's true, that maybe they haven't been rationing enough, because I'm sure you bring enough for a month, but not for maybe 2 or 3.
No.
They had the lobster rationing, but
Yeah, and I find it weird though, like they talk about rationing, because if you look at the portions, they're eating quite big portions at the beginning. Like their plates are full of whatever it is, bacon and shit. And if the lobster, okay, I can see that the lobster is just a feast, you know? Like it's a final day, I'll make lobster, you know?
Yeah.
But if it isn't, then that's the point where their rations have run out, because that's the point where they have to go fishing for lobster.
Yeah.
And that's one day before they're supposed to be picked up.
Yeah, but also how many meals do they eat a day, right? Because we've only seen them basically eat together at what I presume is night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
right, so...
one.
Yeah, 1 meal a day. And it's not that much that they're eating, right? If it's only 1 meal a day.
Yeah.
I also kept thinking, what are they drinking? Like, except for alcohol? Because clearly the water is out. At some point they're making coffee, I assume...
With water.
Or they're just making straight up rum coffee or whatever they're drinking.
Yeah.
Like, you must be so dehydrated. Maybe this is just two people getting really dehydrated, and this is what happens.
Yeah, possibly, potentially. I like, if we're going with the dehydration route, that they didn't go for them drinking salty water. Like, I like that they sort of avoided that cliche, because that's of course cliche, like people being lost at sea, and then how long did it take before you start drinking the salty water, you know? So I like that that's not in there, because I like not doing cliches.
Yeah.
And I like that it's not sea focused, you know. You see that Wake is sort of a sailor man, or at least he says he is, and that's sort of that the sea is his thing. But I like that instead of drinking salty water, they drink oil, because then it sort of sticks within that isolation of the lighthouse.
Yeah.
You know, it's all natural elements of the lighthouse, and not the sea is like kind of irrelevant even.
Maybe it's also them trying to get a little bit of the light inside of themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be.
A little warmth.
Yeah. So, what is the light?
So, what is it? Okay, do I want to say what does it symbolize, or just what's inside the thing?
Yeah, both. Both are interesting questions.
Okay, let's start with what's inside the actual lantern.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm gonna say nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing. Yeah, just a lamp.
Just a lamp.
Wake says there's a flame in there, right? And
Yeah.
there's like all kinds of weird shit happening when he's like staring at it, right? With the effects and the sound and stuff like that. So it could be basically anything. Maybe it's just some kind of weird thing that gives you some kind of mental distortion, right? Because it was filmed in such a weird manner.
Yeah.
Especially compared to the rest of the film, right?
Yeah, because the thing you're talking about is like when it opens up and it shines in Winslow's face, and he just starts screaming, but his voice sort of distorts with the sound of the film. Yeah, that's. So I think it's sort of a psychedelic of some stuff. Yeah.
I was watching a video by Acolytes of Horror, who's really good, so go check out his channel, and he interpreted as Winslow realizing that it was all for nothing, and it is just a lamp, and they've been fighting over it and killing each other over it, and it's nothing, and it's basically him laughing that he walked into that trap. I interpreted it differently. I definitely thought there was some kind of otherworldly thing in there that was so strange and supernatural that he couldn't comprehend it, and it just broke his brain. At least that's how I interpreted the first time.
Yeah, the first time I interpreted it a bit more Lovecraftian as well.
Yeah,
Thank
with
you
the
very much.
Tentacles.
Yeah, exactly. It is a very Lovecraftian film at points, but I think I like the nothing ending more.
Yeah.
Also, would have liked what I just sort of popped into my head. How fun would it have been? Like there wouldn't have been a reveal if it's just an endless more stash of booze. Like if Wake just has a fuck ton of bottles just crammed in there,
and
it
porn
just
or something.
just a crusty barnacled porn bag,
which is basically for them the sublime, right? That's the sublime for them at this point, being there for so long.
Yeah, an actual woman.
Yeah.
Oh, wouldn't that be the worst? Just like just keeping a woman in there, just
the lamp opens and just like a leg.
Like a mermaid tail just sort of flops out.
Yeah. Also being deprived of water.
Yeah, just a nice crisp bottle of water.
Yeah.
Oh man, me in Ireland.
I do like how the lamp is filmed though, because I've googled pictures and I think it looks accurate. I don't think they did anything funny with how the lamp is supposed to look in real life. I think that's just a normal lighthouse light. But the way it sort of is filmed from the inside is almost like it's in this glass crystalline case.
Yeah,
it's almost like a Fabergé egg, you know. It's
Uh-huh.
got all these like nice edges and it's shiny and it's like almost like it's on display in a museum.
I think in any case, I'm glad that there's no definitive answer to be given about
Very
what is
much.
in there. I'm glad they focused on Robert Pattinson's face for that final reveal, because in the end, that's what's interesting. That's what you're building up to.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter what's in there. It matters that these people thought it was important enough to kill over.
Yeah, and especially on my second viewing, like for the first viewing, I definitely focused most on what's in the light.
Yeah.
Because that is what the film is building up towards, and that's what the film wants you to focus on. But on the second viewing, like, you know that it's not going to give you anything, so then you start paying attention to, as you said, like, the struggle that these men are having, and that's like infinitely more interesting.
The same with the mermaid and Windsor's backstory. Like, I was really interested in who's this guy that he keeps seeing, and now I know, okay, so it's his former boss that he killed and then took his name. But it's almost not, it feels so insignificant when you think about what's actually going on in the film.
Yeah,
It's very strange. I think that's a really interesting thing and a clever thing for a film to be able to do, where you've seen all of its secrets and the film just got more interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of secrets, the spilling the beans thing, because it was such a meme. Because it's in the trailer, right? And it's kind of just dropped in there out of nowhere, and it's kind of funny. It's like, why you just spill your beans? That was just the insight.
Which is not how he says it, but
No.
it's definitely how we said it.
Yeah. So like that was the meme, and shit, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, I was really worried that we'd be sitting there in the movie theatre and that moment would pop up and we would just all start laughing and just be like, oh, why did you spill your beans? And then everyone would think we were super annoying for doing that. But when it actually happened in movie theatres, it was so tense that I don't think any one of us was even thinking about laughing or about the meme.
Even though there's lots of stuff in there that's really funny, right? Like I'm not sure. I'm sure it's supposed to be actually, because all this stuff happens and it's almost comical, right? It's not really like funny, but comical because it's so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially the part like it's almost slapstick with like it's all a bit of Stan and Ollie-esque, like where they're painting the lighthouse with Winslow sitting in like the rickety ass chair and then Wake sort of lowering him in these like intervals, and he just goes like chunk every time until like the funny stops and he drops him to the ground by accident. Quotes.
The same with like Winslow and Wake's fight over the lobster, and I think it's one of the it's one of the best speeches in the film, if not the best speech. But it's really funny in a weird way because it is about not liking the food that Wake was serving, and he gets really upset about it. It's when you see him the most upset is when his food is being criticized, and that is funny. But when you're watching the scene, it's not funny. It's terrifying. It's a little funny. It's both.
It's ridiculous.
It's good.
Yeah, it's just weird, right? Because he's such a, well, not necessarily stoic per se, but still kind of, like reserved and not really emotional on his own behalf, right?
Yeah.
And he seems hurt by the idea that his food might not be good, which is really weird. It's just...
Especially because he has this position of power over Windsor, so why would you even care anymore? But I think it is... I think power and the power struggle is at the core of the story. Especially if you think about them as young and old, it is about old feeling threatened by young, feeling like my position at the top of the lighthouse is being threatened by this younger person who could replace me, and then I would have no purpose and would die, basically.
Yeah, and wouldn't find work anywhere else.
Yeah, and then Young is struggling with this idea of being Wake's employee for no other reason than that Wake is older.
Mm-hmm.
And being treated very unfairly just because he's younger, but not necessarily because he's less skilled.
And it's also the idea that Winslow is deprived of a lot of things, right? Being there, Wake as well, but still Winslow is the perspective that we mostly get, right?
Yeah.
And he's deprived of physical touch, of good food, of water, even alcohol at this point, even satisfaction at some point, right?
Yeah.
When he's like doing his stuff in the
sexual
Lighthouse.
gratification.
Yeah. Right. So there's nothing going on at all, and I think that part of the power is also getting that gratification somewhere, right? Albeit in the Lighthouse, be it in being the leader in some kind of stuff, having power over the other, not having to do the shitty chores, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like something.
And that's the sad thing, because he wants to get all those things that have been stripped away from him, or that he feels that Wake is keeping under lock and key in the lantern. But Wake is as deprived of all those things as he is. They're fighting the wrong people, essentially.
Yeah, which you can see when they're together and drunk, right? And they're together and you see they're both obviously not in their right mind anymore, right? They're both drunk, they both feel like they need something, crave something, but can't really get it from each other, right? But so it's kind of a weird dynamic going on there.
I've heard people describe it as a very socialist film in that setting, where they are they're fighting each other, but really it's the shitty work conditions that they should be fighting.
Yeah, because Wake at some point says like the knife, Winslow steals a knife and like, oh, should you give that back? That's government property.
Yeah.
So if you want to do a very Marxist reading of it, it's like, oh, they should rebel against the government who put them in place and created this system for them in which laborers fight amongst each other.
And his wages are a huge thing, because Wake multiple times says, I'll dock this from your wages, or I'll make sure that you will be fired without being paid for the work that you did. And that is ruinous to Winslow, who clearly is a very poor man. Otherwise, you wouldn't do this kind of job. Yeah. So this capitalist system is somehow very important in this film.
Yeah, which also indicates that Wake is in power, right? Because he's able to say, you won't get any wages if you behave like this.
And his stupid little ledger that he gets to write everything in that he just makes up, or doesn't make up, because...
Who knows?
Like we said when we were watching the film, Wake gets really upset because the floors aren't done. But we never see Winslow do the floors specifically.
No. And the thing always looks like, you gotta give Wake credit, the floor always looks like crap.
Yeah.
It really does look grimy, so yeah, maybe he doesn't do them.
I think the only work he does well is when it's directly for the lantern.
Yeah, that's what you see him doing the most as well. You're like moving coals back and forth, making sure there's oil up there. Just anything to get himself closer to the lantern.
Yeah.
And to keep it working. Oh, that would be the worst. Like, could you imagine, like, the only thing you really are living for, and like, if you don't do your job properly, it might die out, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would keep you working. And that's sort of, if we want to keep the Marxist analogy going for a little bit, what if, like, the light is, I don't know, anything you might believe in, you know, religion, which Marxist has Marx called that opium for the people? Was that him?
Well, I was gonna say the light is the American dream.
Mm-hmm.
It's that idea of, I just want to make my wage like every other man and raise a roof of my own. It's the idea that if you just work hard enough, you get to climb the ladder, you get to be on top, and then you have that position of power.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fake, because Wake doesn't have those things, because he's still working on the Lighthouse, and he supposedly has been doing this job for ages.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when Winslow finally finds the light, you see what happens to him, right?
Yeah.
So it's obviously not really that great of a dream, which fits the Marxist reading again.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And also, this thing will probably touch upon a different video if you ever arrive at the film Parasite. The idea that you can't move up on the social ladder without pushing somebody else down.
Yeah.
Because Winslow has to kill Wake before he can get to the position he wants.
Yeah.
He can't achieve it through his hard work. Yeah.
Is Wake dead at the end of the film?
Is Wake even alive?
Is he even alive? Who is Wake? Is this just Thomas Howard freezing to death in Canada?
Yeah.
If we're assuming that everything that we see is happening in some way or form, that is really interesting that we see Windsor's corpse outside and naked at the end of the film, even though he died fully clothed inside of the lighthouse. So someone dragged him out of there for the gulls to eat.
Yeah. Okay. What could happen is there's this sort of logical explanation for why he's naked. because the thing that happens when you suffer from hypothermia, which he would have if he's cold and wet outside, is that you actually start feeling really warm.
But how did he get outside?
Crawling.
Well, why would he go outside if he can also stay inside where it's warm?
Maybe he rolled outside, because he was falling down the stairs.
He's rolling outside and his pants fall off. No, what
But if
I like the idea of Wake being alive, because then it's even more for nothing.
Yeah, but did you see how he ended? Like, he
Oh,
got
fuck,
a
with the axe,
pickaxe in his head, so that seems really off that he's alive, right?
I was thinking he just got hit with the kettle and then Winsor...
No,
right, he did with
it
the
might
axe.
be a hallucination, of course, as all the other things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
he split a skull in twain.
yeah.
Because like that's the fun thing about the black and white thing, because his face is just caked in what you assume is blood, but it could also just be that he indeed hallucinating and just sliced open the oil canister and there's just oil all over his face.
Yeah, or his wet mud.
Mud, yeah. Anything, could be anything.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we just arrive to the question, or at least the one that we've been dancing around, and that's what is real in this film? What is really happening? What is all inside of Windsor's head or Wake's head? And does it even matter?
It doesn't matter to the film, because it clearly doesn't matter to the director either. You know, if Robert Eggers goes like, hey, you can figure out for yourself, you can decide for yourself what's real, then clearly the film doesn't care.
Yeah, because he did say that. At least Rob said that's what he was told in an interview.
So if we let go of that notion that the film doesn't care, then it's up to us, right? Then it's up to whatever we feel the film wants us to make us feel. I'd like to believe that both Wake and Winslow are real. And that most of the things that you see do happen. And that Wake is making Winslow mad on purpose, sort of gaslighting him and sort of poking him in whatever turn he can get.
Like giving him the mermaid symbol and stuff
Giving him the mermaid symbol, yeah. Starting from day one and sort of making him doubt when he's going to leave and stuff. And then when Winslow chases him down, convince him that the Wake chase down Winslow with an axe, convince him that it's the other way around and such. And I feel like he's doing that on purpose because he's actually been there a really long time, like in the job and on the rock, and he wants Winslow to kill him.
Oh, okay.
I think Wake wants to die, doesn't have the guts to kill himself, and is just egging on person after person. He did it to his other second in command, who either they got into a scuffle and he killed him, or killed himself, or just got legitimately went mad. And then Winslow came along and he finally succeeded in snapping somebody to end him.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
I like to think of it as more like a fairy tale or something like that, or like a poem, even where it doesn't even matter that much if these are real people, but they're more symbols or characters in this parable. And I like to think of them as young and old in that way, where they are these people. They are the young and the old. That are fighting for survival over each other, and they're just going round and round like that like the Lighthouse does, basically. It's this fight over who gets to be on top, who gets to be, well, literally on top in the Lighthouse. Well, we talked about it before, the Lighthouse being this phallic symbol as well. Who gets to have the power over the other person. That's what I like to think about it. So then it doesn't matter what really happens and what doesn't, because it's all part of the narrative.
Right, yeah.
I hope that was kind of clear. It felt really woolly.
No, I get what you're going for.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. I think I understood as well. I also like the idea that they're both alive, and that basically Winslow is just hallucinating a lot, right? Because the film allows for that reading, I guess, because you have like these things that Wake has been writing up, and he gets really angry when he reads them because in his mind they didn't happen. And also with the idea of hallucination, that even that his expectations usually that he creates in his head also create what happens on the screen, right? So he expects this mermaid to be this kind of thing, and then but it's kind of weird, so he gets like the imagination of the imaginary sex with the mermaid, the light, that he kind of starts screaming and that he's all overwhelmed because it was too much, because it's what he's always been working towards.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff, that he just basically hallucinates everything together.
Yeah.
In between the lines, that the actual stuff that they do together at night is what actually happened. But that the rest around it is all his hallucination, and that just keeps happening based on his expectations.
That's really interesting.
Oh, I really like that. Yeah. So basically, what you're saying, especially with the light, that the light is as bad as he'd imagined it. Basically,
self-fulfilling prophecies.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of prophecies in the text.
Yeah, definitely. Like the gulls and Prometheus, as you said.
Yeah.
I also like there's a lot of prophecies and also like lots of other allusions to Greek mythology. Are also really reminded me of Icarus near the end, of course, because Icarus got too close to the sun and then fell back down to earth and died.
Yeah.
And also reminded me of Sisyphus. Is that how you say that in English?
I think so.
Sisyphus, whom had to roll a boulder up a mountain in the underworld as his punishment for, I think, trying to feed his son to the gods. Was that him?
Yeah. There's you have the other one as well, who like can't eat or drink.
That's Tantalus.
And I never know who did what.
Yeah, anyway, so Sisyphus has to roll a boulder up a mountain, and once he gets there to the top, the boulder just rolls back down and he can start over again.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is just this film in a nutshell. Yeah. Winslow just does the same job all day, every day, and it's never good enough, and he has to do it all over 10 times over if Wake asks him to, and he'll do it smiling. And it just comes to a climax at the end with him getting to the top of the stairs, only to tumble down again.
Yeah.
I also like this idea of Wake just being a prophet, right? That he alludes to the fire.
Yeah.
He says all this kind of weird stuff, and after he dies, he takes the power for himself, right? And then it all comes tumbling down because he doesn't have his prophet anymore. His religion, his faith is unknown.
Ah,
that's really interesting.
That's really nice. I really like that. Yeah.
And just in case anyone who's listening isn't really familiar with the myth of Prometheus. So Prometheus in Greek mythology is the god that stole fire to give it to people. And that is sort of what kicked in humans' technological evolution, I suppose, but also made them too powerful in the eyes of the gods. And as such, they felt the need to punish Prometheus. So he got chained to a rock.
Yeah.
And every day vultures would come and eat his liver, and then at night it would grow back, and then that would happen over and over again. Yeah. And visually, that is probably what is being referenced in the final scene.
Yeah, in which Winslow lies naked on the beach, being eaten alive by birds. Yeah. Which is coincidentally, I think most people's worst nightmare, but Grace's worst nightmare of all. Because as we established before, Grace hates birds.
Yes. So when we went into this film, we had no idea what it was going to be. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be scared unless it's going to be about scary birds. So.
And then it's just
cool.
Seagull galore, yeah.
Thanks, yeah.
Also, talking about prophecies and seagulls, we need to mention the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, of course. With
as good English literature students.
Yes, definitely. When Winslow kills the bird, of course he dooms himself and is doomed to be out at sea until his dying day. Right?
That is no. I don't think he can die. I think that's kind of the point in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner.
Yeah, because he's tasked with warning other sailors, right?
Yeah.
Is that his thing? Yeah.
And he has to wear the dead
bird around his neck.
His neck.
And what a warning he gives.
Yeah.
Yes. Also, there's more around the Rime of the Ancient Mariner in there. Like you also have the water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. That's in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner as well.
Flex maar.
Yeah, I only know that from the only reason I know that is because of the Iron Maiden song. Which is a really good song, by the way. Go listen to the song. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also apparently based on an Edgar Allan Poe story called The Lighthouse, but I haven't read it.
No, me neither.
So if you've read it, educate us in the comments.
Yeah, please do leave comments. We love those.
Yes.
There's probably a lot of Moby Dick in there as well, because...
He does call him Captain Ahab.
Yeah, I like that, but I like that it sort of flips on his head because he says, "I'm so sick of your Ahab bullshit."
Yeah.
I really like that, but of course, like the whole thing of Moby Dick is also sort of the unachievable, you know, like the white whale.
Yeah.
Which also just sort of could see the parallel between that and the light. So, and I really like that. It also kind of fits the theme of the film, you know. It's just this sort of amalgamation of these fantastical stories that sort of all come together in a jumbled mess. And if you sort of can hear, it's all not quite it, you know. There's elements in there, but it's not one-on-one.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what's happening in the film as well. There's just these scenes that you can sort of mishmash together, but it doesn't match up one-on-one.
Yeah. And if you read all the fairy tales, that's kind of what they're like, because it's stories that are being passed on and on and on. So people add stuff and change stuff, and it always feels a little bit disjointed. Especially if you're used to the very nicely packaged Disney versions of the fairy tales, and then you read the original ones and you go on a whole road trip that doesn't connect to the rest of the story, but it sure is in there.
Yeah.
But I think in general, well, not even in general, we just really liked the film. I thought it was really good.
It was really great.
I feel like for a lot of films we always have some point of criticism to find, like, oh, this was executed a bit poorly, but I think even on my second viewing I can find nothing really to fault for the film. But I see Grace raising a finger, so she probably can. Just to preface, I do think it's a great film. It has set a new kind of standard for horror, at least in my personal opinion. But so I've seen The Witch and I've seen The Lighthouse by Robert Eggers, and I'm seeing a theme there that I'm not really fond of, which is scary sexy ladies. Now, I am fond of scary sexy ladies, but I feel like it's a very lazy plot device. And he did it with the sexy witch who bit the child in The Witch, and he did it here with the sexy siren who also becomes scary sometimes. And I just feel like this idea of female sexuality being scary to men just tires me. Yeah.
So I definitely think that was a bit of a weak spot. I get what they're trying to do with the mermaid, and it fits really well thematically, but it's also literally the only female character in the film, and she's not even a character.
No, she's a set piece.
And when you hear people talk about it, they're like, oh, it's just, yeah, she's a set piece, she's a plot device. When you hear people talk about the films, like, oh, it's just these two guys on an island and the actress never gets mentioned. And like, she's there in the freezing cold, you know, tits out.
Stark naked, yeah.
Give this lady some credit. She's in the darn film.
Yeah, she is. She is. I'm actually going to look up her name and give her some credit right now.
Yeah.
While I type. I do feel like I do agree when you mention it like that, and I have to rewatch the Vivitch because I do remember that she is called Valeria Karaman, and she is from Moldova. So good job on you, Valeria, for being the only female set piece in the film.
Douze
pois for our European friends out there. Douze pois to Moldova. I had a train and now it's left the station. Yes, the lady. I feel like it's used more effectively in this film, although they could have done it differently. They could have done with just the effigy. But I do like that it sort of exemplifies, for me, their repressed homosexual feelings. Because at least Wake is really being gay for Winslow, I feel. Because like, from the moment he walks into the lighthouse, he is like, blue-eyed, pretty-faced. Why?
I don't think he says blue-eyed.
Okay, but he does definitely say pretty-faced, though.
Yeah, he says eyes shining like a pretty lady or something. Like that.
Exactly, and it says that multiple times throughout the film.
Yeah.
So like Wake definitely has an eye for Winslow. And I feel like the like what you said, like Winslow doesn't get any gratification from masturbating. I also feel like he just has this really perverted sense of sexuality with a woman, because that's not his nature. You know, he's just like, oh, sex with women is weird because it's not like
Winslow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sort of like, oh, this is the only thing I can wank to because I'm not gonna wank to the other man in the room because that would be weird. Like, that would be awkward. So I guess I'll just wank to this thing with titties because that's what normal men do because I'm a strong lumberjack.
Okay, but not to be rude, Willem Dafoe just farting and looking gross in that film wasn't exactly appealing.
No, I get that, but you know what I'm getting at, right?
I interpret it slightly differently, but in the same vein where I feel like sex for Winsor is a power thing because you see he's doing it in a very aggressive manner. He's always imagining himself on top of the lady and then just like power jacking it basically, and it looks painful and looks aggressive.
Yeah, it's also represented that way, right? Whereas Winsor is doing it on the bottom of the tower, and Defoe is basically up there doing the same, right? We don't see him doing it, but we do see his end result coming down, right? So it's kind of nasty stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also really don't like the implication at the end where they have like their old fisticuff, and then Winslow is standing over Wake and he's making him bark like a dog, and then he's like, and roll over. It's like, oh man.
Power hungry.
Yeah, I was thinking though, because when they walk outside, he's wearing his long johns and he's wearing like a waistcoat over it. So if that had happened, they would have had to take all of it off and then put all of it on. And that made me think that it didn't happen. Film definitely wants you to think that it happened, but that...
Yeah, the implication is bad enough.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a different take though. If we're going with the why was he naked route, what if that did happen and he's just walking around naked the whole time? And he's just imagining him wearing clothes because he's just so out of it.
Yeah.
What if... Oh, that's a fun... What if they're just like butt-ass naked for like the major portion of the film?
I'm glad they weren't.
Nope, me neither.
Yeah.
Because the film plays with like that sort of stuff as well, like with clothing.
Have a near kiss as well.
Wake
near kiss
was naked at some point, right? In some really weird like scene for just a second, and then he disappeared again. Was it a hallucination again? I guess or something.
He
right?
was standing on top of the lighthouse, and you could see him like his naked silhouette, right?
Yeah, but also in the house, I believe. There's also one point where I think I'm not sure what exactly happens at that point, but he's naked as well, and he's just standing there. And then you go back to whatever.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. Like he's holding Winslow by the scruff of his shirt, and he's sort of looking him in the face, and then his eyes are beaming into his face.
Oh, outside,
naked.
Yeah, it's that weird scene where Winslow like goes to someone on the floor, and that's also Winslow, and then he turns around, and then there's Wake with the beaming eye. At
some point, this is fairly early in the film, if you want to go with the homosexuality route. They're smoking, right? They're smoking the whole time. And at some point, if you want to get really like metaphorical with this, Winslow smokes cigarettes. Wake smokes a pipe. Yeah. And there's a point in which they switch. And Winslow is smoking Wake's pipe.
Yeah.
Make it out what you will.
It also might be the power symbols again, right? Because like the pipe is more of an old people thing, and cigarettes more of a young people thing. So that he wants to be the, like the one in power, so he uses the pipe.
Yeah. Man, the acting in this is just so good.
Definitely,
it's amazing.
Yeah. The acting, the whole aesthetic, like even thinking about that pipe, you just know that Robert Eggers like looked up a billion pictures of like time accurate pipes to make sure that they had one that fit. I
am so glad that it's in black and white because not for 1 second this makes so much sense. It just makes sense. There's not a single second that I would want to know what color everything is. I really couldn't care less because what color their shirts might be, or what color the can of beans is that they're eating, or what the liquid is that they're drinking. It just makes so much sense for the whole isolated vibe and just the grittiness of the whole situation.
It's this discomfort that you feel while watching it, right? Because you feel discomfort from beginning to end. You never know what actually is going on, what you're supposed to feel, and a lot of it is really, really, really not nice to watch. I mean, it's a great film, right? Yeah. But so it's not always pleasurable to watch.
Yeah. No. And it is that thing, by making it black and white, you are always searching for the light. I'm sorry that rhymed.
Yeah.
But that's the whole thing. The light looks even brighter because they filmed it in black and white. And that thing that you said about it feeling closed off, that is highlighted by the fact that the ratio is basically a square.
Yeah, everything
It's so good.
is boxed in. I love the initial shot as well when Winslow walks into the dormitory. And you can see that Wake's bed is already made, but it doesn't really click with you. And then you just hear this like liquid clattering noise, and then you realize that Wake's actually there pissing in a bowl, but you can't see him because he's just behind the pool. And it's so good. It's so good. It's such a good way to establish, like, yes, this is how we're going to film this film. Be amazed, you know. And then he just walks out into the frame. It's so good.
The language is really brilliant as well. It is poetry at sometimes. It's really beautiful, elevated language. Hard for non-natives. I could have done with subtitles at times, but
me too.
Yeah. But even though it's hard to follow sometimes, the language didn't feel unnatural to me.
No,
it made sense, and the way it is acted, it just feels like this is how these people are supposed to be speaking, and I'm just along for the ride. I am completely accept that this is how these people sound.
And I think that's an amazing thing that Eggers did in The Witch as well. I was going to say The Witch, where he uses old-timey language, but it doesn't feel like you're watching this heavy period piece that you can't get into.
No.
It just feels really natural. Even if they were speaking in a certain dialect that we're not familiar with, even if they're speaking in a certain rhythm that we're not familiar with, or at least that we usually don't use. So well done.
I think it's also a bit easier because Wake has like this really big sailor thing going on with his voice, right? But Winslow is not that hard to understand usually, right? He's pretty clear, so that makes it easier to get the general gist of what's going on, even if it's sometimes somewhat unclear.
Yeah. I definitely agree.
And I liked what you said when we finished watching it, or maybe when just about end of the film, that their voices seem to intentionally be softer because it gets. What did you say again it was?
So, like, there are all these kind of like effects going on in the film, right? The annoying buzzer, the sounds of the birds, like all kinds of stuff going on, the rain, and their voices kind of sound soft every now and then. So they're kind of hard to understand, not only because they speak in a certain way, but also because they're just soft spoken in the film. As it seems almost as if they dimmed the sound of the spoken stuff so that they can like. Accentuate all the stuff going on with the sounds, right?
Yeah.
To add that kind of flavor to it.
Yeah, definitely. And also that the sounds sort of shift back and forth in how loud they are, because that makes sense, because your mind just goes to different things at different times. So at some point, if you're there for a long time, you're like, oh, this fucking horn again, you know, or the fucking birds again, you know, and or like Wake's farts, you know, your mind is drawn to different things at the time. So I like that they sort of play with the flow always, almost like how the waves of the sea sort of go back and forth.
When we were doing a 10 candles session set on a boat, I wanted to use the Lighthouse soundtrack for ambience, but it's just a freaking horn, so I'm not going to listen to this again.
Nobody was entertained.
No.
Yeah, we were definitely. I feel like we were all kind of dreading hearing that noise again for an hour and a half on this rewatch.
And it was annoying
once again. So annoying.
You never get used to it.
Yeah. That's the brilliance of it. It's not really unnerving. It's really just annoying.
Yeah.
And it's established so well because it's like the first day of work for Winslow, and it just blares into his ears, and he's like, "Oh, god damn it!"
I think they did a good job though, because it never interrupted a scene. It was there. It was annoying. You were always hearing it, but it never interfered with the acting or what was going on.
No, it was actually really well executed. But that's the kind of the thing of it, right? They execute these things really well because it never gets in the way of the acting, whatever's happening, right? They do that really well.
It has to be such a hard film to make as well, with the conditions of the island. I know they just built everything on the island, like they built the lighthouse, and it had to be a lighthouse that they could open up, so the camera people could be there and the sound people could be there. And I think they actually build their own cameras because they don't make those cameras anymore. So they had to like find old material and kind of piece them together.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah, it's really brilliant.
On that note of appreciation, that might be a good time to end the podcast because this has been a long one. But before we do, I want to give a shout out to a few people. I think you mentioned Acolytes of Horror.
Yes.
They have they raised some of the interesting points that we also touched upon. So definitely go check out their videos.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to thank some people from Instagram who shared our first podcast and who have been really supportive. I want to thank Eloise Ivy, Bo Kramers, and Africa van Pelt for supporting us. And just a little behind the scenes magic, in case you're wondering why am I only being shouted out now. We usually record these 4 at a time, so if you do a suggestion or you leave a comment, it might take us 4 episodes to respond to those.
But we will.
But we definitely will, because we love all the suggestions and comments you leave, and we'll definitely try to keep in touch with y'all.
Yes.
So on that note, I've been Wouter.
I've been Grace.
I've been Joey.
And you've been slashed.